Hello all. So originally I wanted to do one of those like top 5 videos covering the melees and covering all the ranged weapons. Uh, but then I realized that it just wasn't gonna cut it. It felt very Watch Mojo-y, and I was like, it's kind of just not what I do. Uh, so we're not gonna do that. Instead, you're gonna watch as I rank every single fucking melee and ranged weapon in the game, with the exception of bows, because I don't like bows. I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you. I do not like bows. There's 6 bows. There's the longbow, hunting bow, short bow, tribal longbow, tribal hunting bow, tribal short bow. And if I were to rank them, I put them all in D tier because I do not like bows, and they are not viable in combat. And that's a whole other video for a whole different time. But with that out of the way, we've got some actual weapons to discuss and diagnose and rate appropriately. And we will start with this cutie, the Tribal War Axe. Yeah, that's the name, right? Yeah, I'm getting that name right. So the Tribal War Axe is an interesting little fucker, and it's the only like high damaging native weapon, so to speak. Uh, it does 50 damage. Uses like it's got like 2.5, 3 hits per stamina bar if I remember correctly. A couple more for your native. And I'll be honest, it's really not that great of a weapon because yeah, it's an axe, but it's got all the problems axes have, but none of the benefits because it's slow like an axe. It uses a lot of stamina like an axe, but it doesn't do the high enough damage like axes. Like it doesn't do a solid amount of damage. It is enough for it to kill barely, but that just it doesn't cut it. I mean, compare it to the second, uh, you know, lowest damaging axe. It's literally 20 hit points behind. Like the boarding axe, which is the axe slightly better than this little fucker, it does 20 more damage. And that's crazy because they have almost identical stamina usage. So for that reason, Tribal Axe is just not a good weapon, and so I'm putting in C tier. Next up, we've got I believe it's called the Ritual Spear. It's one of 3 native polearms. I'm not considering the Tribal Axe to be native polearm, just for clarity. It might actually be a polearm. I'm not great on my classifications, but for now, I'm not calling it that. So these are the 3 native polearms, and they're very similar. They have slightly differing stats, and the worst of the 3 by far is this one, the Ritual Spear. And the Ritual Spear does 25 damage, 65 thrown, and it's the fastest of the 3. The problem is it also has the least reach of the 3. It's basically a stone spear, but for natives. And for that reason, it's going to go C tier, because stone spears in general aren't especially useful. They have kind of a niche following in Northwind, but they're just not great weapons. They just don't do enough damage. It's like a great pike, but without any of the fucking punch behind it. And for that reason, it's just going C tier. And I mean, the throwing is nice. Don't get me wrong, throwing is nice, but it's just it doesn't do enough damage. You can't like quick switch with one. You can't do the Tomahawk quick switch where you hit once and throw once and you kill them nearly instantly. It only does 90 damage, and so it's not even viable because 25 plus 65 is 90. It's not 100. Then we've got the Tribal Spear. And the Tribal Spear is an interesting little guy. It's essentially a long tomahawk because it's got essentially the same stats as the Colonist Tomahawk. Although it does. I'm pretty sure it even does 6 hits per stamina bar. But so anyways, Tribal Spear, 30 damage, 70 damage thrown, and it's pretty good. The only real complaint I ever have about spears and polearms in general is they've got such long pulls. You typically telegraph when you're using them, and so you're telegraphing the side you're hitting on, and because of that, it's pretty easy to counter them if you're somewhat decent at blocking. And so we're gonna put this at B tier because it's not terrible. It's pretty good. It's one of the best native weapons, but all native weapons are pretty shit in general. So it's gonna go B tier. And then we've got this little guy. This is the native tomahawk. It's the tribal tomahawk, and the tribal tomahawk's interesting because it's a very clear example of this little nerf that the devs put in about a month or so after the tribal update. Because when the tribal update dropped, all of the native stone and antler weapons did the same damage as their colonist counterparts. And so what colonists would do is they would make these weapons on their natives and then just drop them in some barrels, and then pick them up when they're colo. And so now they've got a bunch of weapons that do the same damage as colonist metal weapons do, only they take a lot less effort to produce, and that was a big problem. And for that reason, they've been nerfed. And so yeah, pretty much every native weapon is slightly worse than its colonist counterpart. And I'd say the most obvious example of this is the tribal Tomahawk. Yeah, I get the names confused sometimes. The Tribal Tomahawk is the most obvious example of this. Does 25 damage, 65 thrown. It's essentially the the ritual spear, but without any of the without the reach. So solid C tier weapon. It's not very good, I'll tell you. Although it is the fastest weapon to like throw in game. Like if you like wind it back and throw it, it is the fastest to finish up that like winding back animation. And then we've got probably the only really like solid native weapon, so to speak, comparable to that of the tribal spear up here. We've got the tribal pike, and the tribal pike has the longest reach of any native weapon. It also does 35 damage, which means it's a 3-hit kill. For those of you who don't know, Northwind players have 100 hit points. And what's cool is it does 75 damage thrown, and it's pretty viable. It's got this crazy reach. It's like a boarding pike in its reach. The only real problem is it's pretty slow. It's one of the slower native melees. Most native melees are pretty fast, with the exception of that tribal war axe. And this one is, yeah, one of the few slow ones. So it's not bad, but it's not great. So it's going to go B tier. Yeah, not much else to say about that one. Then we got the bayonet. Bayonets are fine. I don't personally like them because you don't have a lot of freedom when you're a bayonet user. You can only hit on one side in one direction, and I don't really like that because that's just not great for me in my playstyle, but a lot of people love it, and most people are bayonet users in Northwind. I'd say maybe 60% of the player base. No, that's true. I'd say 50% are bayonet users because they're just viable. They're really versatile. They're great little weapons, and I don't like them personally, but a lot of people do. So that's gonna be a solid A tier for me. They do 50 damage, 4 hits per stamina bar. Not a lot of complaints. They're especially great in like close quarters or when you want to get around someone's block or get into their hitbox. They're great for that too. And then we've got the Stone Spear. Stone Spear is a colonist weapon. It's really a new player weapon, but has this niche following in our community for some reason. It uses very little stamina, relatively speaking. Does 25 damage, 65 thrown. It's not great. I think it has 8 hits per stamina bar. It's very much a spammy weapon, but it doesn't have the punch of the better spammy weapons like Great Pike, and so it's really kind of an ineffective spammy weapon. I guess I'll put it at C tier, honestly, because you can kill people with them. They're just not that good at it. And then we've got the tribal hatchet, the stone hatchet, which is the colonist variant of the tribal hatchet, and this is another new player weapon. This one you really don't see ever in combat. It's just such a rarity. Occasionally I'll use like 3 or so of these, and I'll use them as like throwing hatchets or something. I'll just chuck them at things I'm fighting. But even that doesn't work super well because I only do 65 damage. These are basically stone spears. Stone hatchets and stone spears are nearly identical. They have identical stats, identical stamina. The only difference is one's a little longer. Not good weapons. I don't recommend using them. And then we've got the Tomahawk. This is the first of our metal colonist weapons, and I really like it. I'll be honest. Those of you who know me, who followed this channel for a while now, know this is my go-to melee. Almost said go-to primary. Because it's just solid all around. It's got 6 hits per stamina bar, 30 damage, which is pretty lacking. It's probably the biggest problem with the weapon. But it does 70 thrown, and it's crazy, crazy fast. I love these weapons. The real big turnoff, and the reason more people don't use them, is because they're a 4-hit kill outside safe zone. And dueling, you can bleed people out occasionally, but it's not super common. But in general, I really do like the weapon. It gets a lot of complaints, though, for the damage, but I do really like the weapon. And I guess we'll put it B tier. I guess we'll put it B tier. Originally I was going to put it A tier, but it gets counted by other things really easily, and there's not a whole lot of really good Tomahawk users anymore, which is such unfortunate. There used to be a lot of great ones, but they've all since disappeared with the faction bans, so that's a rip. And then we've got the tribal hatchet, and the tribal hatchet is given to natives when they first start playing the game. You've got an unlootable tribal hatchet as a native, and then you can also make some, and they're literally stone hatchet reskins. They're not good in combat. I don't recommend using these ever. And then we've got the bong stick. The bong stick's official name is the Tribal Club. Uh, it's really slow. It's slow as fuck. I don't actually recommend using one of these in combat because they are so ridiculously slow. They're not as slow as like a falchion or an axe, but they are slow, and so it's gonna just it's not a very good idea to use one of these things because they only do 25 damage, and they're only really viable when they're bonking someone in the first place. And even then, if you throw one, it's a 50-50 chance you'll bonk them. So I really don't recommend using one of these. We're gonna cruise right through these because we've got 52 of these fuckers. Okay, we've got the what the hell is your name? We've got the boarding pike. Boarding pike is probably the longest ranged weapon in the game. It's got 40 damage, which is pretty damn good. Well, actually, it's about average. And then it's got 5 hits per stamina bar, if I remember correctly. And the boarding pike is not bad. The only real problem is because it's got such a long-ass fucking polearm, and because it's so slow, you really telegraph your hits, and so people will be able to block you very easily most of the time. Which is a problem. You know, you've got like the predictability of an axe without any of the damage, and so boarding pikes are really not all that great for combat. They used to be really good for hitting through walls and doors, though, until that was made bannable. And then we've got the broadaxe, which is not really seen all that commonly. Similar to the long spear, these aren't really seen all that commonly in combat just because they're kind of rare weapons, but they're kind of unsung heroes of combat. The boarding axe is very similar. Sorry, not the boarding axe. The broad axe is very similar to the boarding axe. It does 5 more damage, though, and it uses, I think, a tiny bit more stamina. But otherwise, they're near identical. It's a solid melee. I'm going to put it B tier, because I don't like axes, and they're really way too slow for my tastes, but they're not bad weapons, necessarily. Does 75 damage, you know, and that's 3/4 of your health right there, so, I mean, they're not that bad. And then we've got the boarding axe, the classic. This is probably the quintessential Northwind melee when it gets down to it. This is one of the first to ever be added in the first place. I mean, hell, we saw this along with like cutlasses and such in the teasers of the Redux back in like 2019. So yeah, these are old melees we're getting into here. And the boarding axe has pretty shit stamina usage. It's also pretty slow, but it is one of the fastest axes. And it does do 75 it does do 70 damage, and for that reason I'm putting A tier, just because it's classic, and it's really the go-to quintessential axe. When someone says, hey, you should start using axes, they mean you should start using a boarding axe. They're good. They're good. I don't like them, but they are good. I can't deny that, especially when you get good at feinting, and you get good at, you know, spinning with your hits, and you get good at totaling, which are 3 different strategies. I cover some of them, I don't cover some of them, and various videos and what have you, whatever. The point is there are ways to make it more effective, and there are ways to mitigate your lack of speed with a boarding axe, and for that reason it's A tier. And then we've got kind of an unsung hero here, which I described earlier. This is the long spear, and the long spear is actually really fast for its size. It's got some really good reach. It's not as long as like the boarding pike, but the long spear's got some good reach. It's 5 hits per stamina bar, and it's almost as fast as the great pike. And I don't know if they've nerfed this last update, but I tested it a couple weeks ago prior to the Halloween update, and it was almost as fast as the great pike. So I'm going to put it A tier, just because it is, well, it has the stats. I really do like them, even though they're like rarely ever used in combat. And we've got the cutlass, and the cutlass, cutlasses aren't inherently bad. They're a good new player melee, really. But the problem is everything a cutlass does, the saber does slightly better. Cutlasses and sabers do the same damage, but saber uses a little bit less stamina. I'm pretty sure the saber's also a little bit faster with its swing time. So there's no real reason to use like a cutlass once you have a saber. So we're gonna do C tier. Well, I mean, it's not a bad. Okay, we'll put a B tier because it's not bad. You can kill people with it. But it's not great, you know. Like D tier is like you really just cannot realistically kill people with this melee before sorry. D tier is you cannot realistically kill someone with this weapon before you get killed yourself. S tier is OP, and then these are, you know, this is the gray area. You know, this is the gray area in between A, B, and C tier. So we move on now. We've got our first ranged weapon. We've got the sharp pistol, and sharps aren't bad. They're very much a starter melee. Oh, sorry, fucking idiot. They're very much a starter pistol, and there's only 3 pistols in the game, so like it's not a tall order to be a quote-unquote starter pistol. One of the few things we need to, you know, expand it on Northwind is pistol variety, because there's fucking like there is 58 weapons, yeah, counting 6 bows, and we have 3 of those being pistols. So that, yeah, just ugh, whatever. Point is, we need more pistols, and the short pistol's fine. Does 50 damage, 10-ish second reload. I'd say B tier, honestly. It's not a bad weapon, but it's so easy to get Prussian cavalry pistols, which are now known as Holstein pistols for you new gens. So yeah, I don't even think you need a Prussian pass like expert smithing in the end of the day, because it's not hard at all to get Prussians, to get Holsteins, whatever. Then we've got a crossbow by Longrod von Huendog, and this cutie is not good. Crossbows are not good anymore. I was going to put up C tier, but I think D tier, because this weapon used to be solid. It used to have this really like fast 2-second reload. Used to do 40 damage, was great. Then it got a buff to 55 damage with double bleed time. Then it got nerfed again to 5-second reload. With the walking animation, still 55 bleed time. Oh, sorry, 55 damage. Then it got nerfed again to 3.5-second reload with 55 damage. Then it got nerfed again, 3.5-second reload with the walking time, etc. And 35 damage. And it's just a fucking mess. Crossbows suck right now. I don't suggest using one. There are 3-hit kill, but they're only barely a 3-hit kill. Like, they qualify as a 3-hit kill in the way like a rapier or like a tribal pike qualifies as a 3-hit kill, so it's just fucking barely. So I really don't recommend using a crossbow if you can afford it right now. Fucking stringed weapons in general are just down bad right now in Northwind. I don't ever recommend using one if you can afford not to. Then we've got the War Axe. A lot of people know the War Axe. The War Axe is basically a Tomahawk reskin. The only difference between the War Axe and the Tomahawk is it does 5 extra little hit points when it's thrown. War Axes do 75 damage when they're thrown, last I checked. That could be wrong. That was like 2-month-old statistic I'm just quoting there. But I'm going to elevate it to A tier just because of that. And the problem is, obviously, War Axes aren't that common on the battlefield because they just get looted. And at the end of the day, why use a War Axe when you can just use a Tomahawk? I mean, 5 damage isn't going to make or break a weapon. So we're going to put it A tier, just for now. Then look at the Saber. Actually, I'm sorry. I'm going to elevate Tomahawk to A tier just because these are kind of quintessential Northwind meta. A tier is quintessential Northwind meta for now. I mean, that's not meta, obviously, but you get the idea. So anyways, the Saber, this is a great little new player weapon. Jack of all trades. I really do like the Saber. It's got a very, very generous hitbox. It's good all around. It's pretty fast, right? 5 hits per stamina bar, 40 damage. It's just a good little melee. It's pretty much, I think, as melees go, probably the most balanced of them all. So solid A tier. Then we've got the backsword. Real fucking 180. Backswords are atrocious. They are some of the fastest melees in game. I'm pretty sure the only melee fast in the backsword is the Kakui. This little guy, Kakui. I called it Kokai, and that felt more natural. Although that's not how you say it. I don't know how to pronounce it. I can't pronounce it. The 2 new weapons I really cannot pronounce the names of. But the point is backswords are really fast. And they do 30 damage. But the real drawback is they have like 5 hits per stamina bar, right? And that's a real fucking drawback. Because that's Saber usage of stamina. Okay? So that's essentially, right, you've got the speed and the damage of a Tomahawk, but you don't have the stamina usage of a Tomahawk, which is really the fucking defining factor of the Tomahawk, and so it's just a pointless weapon. You're not going to be able to reliably kill anyone with a backsword, and for that reason I don't recommend it. It's also got a really, really short hitbox, so I don't recommend using it against anyone with like a great pike or another weapon of equal or greater range. Another melee weapon, by the way. Now we got the Falchion. Falchions are not good. They've got 4 hits per stamina bar, 45 damage, and on paper that's actually not the worst thing in the world, right? It's actually capable of bleeding people out, right? Any weapons that can sum up a damage value to 90 will bleed someone out. So like Tomahawks bleed people out. 3 hits with a Tomahawk, you've got 10 health left, which you can bleed someone out in 20 seconds with. Falchion, right? 45 damage, so 2 hits, bleed someone out in 20 seconds. But the real broken factor with the Falchion is it's almost as slow as fucking axes. And so you're just not going to hit shit. At the end of the day, Falchions are just not good. So I guess we'll do D tier, because technically speaking, you can kill someone with a falchion, but it's really not common. Labry's Axe is literally a reskin of the War Axe, so it's going up here with A tier. Then we've got a Charlie. We've got the Charleston Musket. Charleston Muskets are dependable, solid. They're going to go B tier. And I'm only doing that because they only do 60, which means you can be outdamaged by pretty much every rifle and blunders. But Charlies do have a very, very large following, and a lot of people are going to be very upset with me for putting them B tier, because many people cite that Charlies are more accurate and they're the most accurate musket, and they also cite that Charlies have the best bayonet hitbox because the bayonet is really far, down to like the length of the barrel. Right? It's really on the tip, and for that reason, Charlies hit the furthest with their bayonet. And I haven't tested that. I can't prove that. I don't know if that's for certain. I mean, it certainly follows. It makes sense logically, but I don't know for the fact. What I do know is Charlies only do 60 damage, which means they're very middling when it comes to ranged weapons, and they are outdamaged by pretty much every other ranged weapon that's not a Charlie when it comes to, a firefight. And that's a big problem. And yeah, it's got its 11-ish second reload time, but you're just outdamaged. You're just straight up outdamaged, and for me at least, that's definitely not worth it. A lot of people are like, okay, that's fine, because it's got a really low insurance cost, relatively speaking, but for me at least, that's just not worth it. Haha. And then we've got the brand new, well, not brand new, it's some months old by now. It's like 4 or 5 months old, I don't know. The Charleston Carbine. And the Charleston Carbine is a joke, just like every other carbine in the game. And it's a very easy D tier. Carbines in Northwind, if you don't know, are kind of a joke. Because they have... Well, the whole idea of a carbine in this game is, yeah, it has bad damage, but it reloads really quickly, and so you can, outfire, you outshoot other people and their other weapons, right? The whole idea is you fire quicker than them, but they fire harder than you. And that's how the idea of carbine balancing is supposed to work. The problem is they don't load nearly fast enough. For example, muskets load in like 11 seconds, and every carbine except the Calvet Carbine reloads in 10 seconds, and 1 second means jack shit in combat. I mean, okay, it can mean something, but it really doesn't. Usually doesn't, especially when it comes to reload times. And so at the end of the day, carbines are a joke, and this carbine is no exception. It's a great little thing for new players, cool little, neat little guy for new players to enjoy, but it's just not viable in combat. Oh, and then we've got the Whitney Carbine, formerly known as the Brown Bess Carbine, the BBC, and the Whitney Carbine is a reskin of the Charleston Carbine, so same weapon, don't need to go into that. And then we've got the blunderbuss, which is a pretty solid weapon. I'm doing B tier for the blunder, because the blunder it's got a pretty good reload time for a weapon that's an instant kill. It's got like a 13-second reload time. But what's so cool about the blunder, sorry. But the only real problems with the blunder is I'm pretty sure it has a pretty hefty. No, actually, no. It's got a good insurance cost. It's like 103. But the problem with the blunder is it uses ammo. It eats up ammo like crazy, and it's a big problem. 2 shots of the blunder, you've used an entire ammunition pouch, and also it doesn't work beyond close quarters combat. It really doesn't. It's super effective in close quarters, right? It's probably the best close quarters weapon we've covered so far, but it does not work beyond close quarters, and that is the real downside of the blunder. That's why it's not higher. And then we've got the Great Axe, which is kind of a joke. People who've been around know that the Great Axe is a little bit of a joke. It's got great damage, best damage of any melee in the game, 80, but its trade-off is so tremendous that most people don't even bother, because it uses half your stamina bar per swing, and that's fucking terrible, unless you're turtling. Turtling, for those who don't know, is crouching the entire fight. Unless you're turtling as a strategy in like a duel or in a fight outside safe zone, that is fucking crippling, right? Using half your stamina bar with 1 swing. It's also the slowest of any melee, and so you've got that to consider, so solid C tier. And then we've got the Great Pike, which, if you've seen any video I've produced recently mentioning this fucker, it's pretty damn great. Great Pikes are OP. They do 40 damage, which is very middling, but they have 6 hits per stamina bar, which is phenomenal for a melee, and they are some of the fastest melees in the game. They're not as fast as back swords, but they are ridiculously fucking fast, and so Great Pikes are solid S tier. They are overpowered, there is no doubt about it. Especially Great Pike spam. Great Pike spam is completely uncounterable, which is a topic for another video, but just long story short, Great Pike spam uncounterable. Unless you've got a Great Pike. Unless you've got another Great Pike, and then you just kind of got to hope and pray. Or Great Pike spam yourself. So anyways, now we've got the the Brown-Bess Musket, or Whitney Musket, whatever. It's literally a Springfield reskin, and for some reason, where's my Springfield? Oh, we haven't covered the Springfield yet, so we're going to move the Springfield and the Brown-Bess Musket, because they're identical. We're going to move them both up to A tier, and let me explain why I'm doing this, because a lot of people are not going to like the fact that I just moved the Spring up to A tier above the Charlie, because there is a good portion of this player base that adores the Charlie and abhors the Springfield. Now, on paper, the Springfield's a much better gun than the Charlie. Springfield does 70 damage, Charlie does 60 damage. Springfield does 84 damage with headshots, by the way. All guns do 1.2 extra damage with headshots, so just keep that in mind. Across the board, by the way, that's for every single gun. But yeah, Springs do 84 damage with headshots, which is phenomenal. Charlies only do 70 damage with headshots, and they both do the same. They both have the same stamina usage with bayonets, the same damage with bayonets, of course, 50 damage for hits per stamina bar, etc. The difference is, a lot of people claim that the Springfield is less accurate than Charlie, which is untrue. I tested this myself. They are identical in accuracy. Their aiming reticles are identical. Unless they changed it yesterday with the Halloween update. They might have, they might not have, etc. But as of last test, they are identical. And then the other real kicker, the two reasons people prefer prefer the Charlie to the Spring is the Charlie, people say it has a better bayonet hitbox. It's further out. And then people say that the Spring is way too expensive to insure. And to be fair, the Spring's actually not that expensive, comparatively speaking, especially compared to some of the better weapons that we're going to cover very soon. But it's Springfield insurance is like $224 for a Pine Iron Spring, which is not that bad because Charlie's like $110. So it's definitely more manageable. But I do see what people are getting at when they say that the Spring insurance is just too high, and those are the two big complaints with the Spring. But in general, right, I do prefer the Spring because it's just 10 more damage, and that's just good. To me, that's just good. 14 more damage if you're landing a headshot. 84 damage is nothing to fucking scoff at, especially for a musket reloading in 11 seconds. So TLDR, I like the Springfield more than the Charlie. I'm sorry. And then we've got, what is this? Oh, this is the Calvet Carbine, another Carbine. Calvet is special because it reloads a half a second faster than the other Carbines, which is comical because half a second means absolutely nothing. So yeah, solid D tier weapon. Now we've got the Holstein Pistol, formerly known as the Prussian Cav. Love these. A tier all the way. Holsteins are the fucking bread and butter of raiding forces. Everyone uses Holsteins. This is the go-to pistol, really. It's 60 damage, real solid. I think it's 10.5 seconds reload time. It's great. It's just a great little weapon. No problem at all with the Holstein. It does everything right. You know, it's a Charleston Musket that's a pistol. And it's really, really easy to get a lot of them with smithing contracts currently, and so people have a lot of them. No complaints there, although I think it should probably be a little harder to get in the future, which it will be, so we're good. Oh, and then we've got the Jaeger Rifle, currently known as the Bayonet. Jaegers are great. I love Jaegers. The Jaeger is essentially a more accurate spring that can't mount a bayonet. It also has a little higher reload time and a much higher insurance cost, which we'll get to. But Jaegers are awesome. I love them. They used to be my favorite weapon in the game, and I think they're still probably my second favorite weapon in the game. Jaegers are just great. The only real downside is the fact that it has like a 300s level, like 300 pounds-ish insurance price per day, which does eat into your wallet. It's not as bad as some of the other weapons we're going to cover, but it's pretty fucking bad. It's pretty egregious. To counteract that, though, Jaeger does fire really, really accurately and really, really far, and this is pretty much the rifle I'd go with if you want to shoot anything and you don't have a Jezzail. Sorry, if you want to shoot anything accurately, you don't have a Jezzail. So yeah, my go-to rifle, if you don't have a Jezzail, is the Bayonet, Jaeger, whatever you want to call it. And my go-to musket is the Clark musket, or Springfield, whatever you want to call it. New gens call it Clark musket. I'm more familiar with Springfield, whatever. All the guns received renames 5 or so months ago. If you want to use them, use them. If you don't want to use them, don't. Whatever, you get the concept. Then we've got the Kent. The Kent is now, Kent short for Kentucky, and it's now called the Milton Rifle. I personally abhor this gun. I hate this fucking gun because it's just not good. But you can still kill things with it. It's not D tier, it's not C tier. It is still technically a gun that shoots. I just don't like it because first off, it's long as shit. You know, you've got like a fucking radio antenna on you whenever it's on your back. It's ridiculously long. And it has a lot of other problems. They're not like huge problems, but they really bug me personally. The Kent, for those of you who don't know, back before the smithing update, did fucking 85 damage, and they nerfed it so hard. It got down to 65 damage. And what's so funny about the Kent is it's a master smithing weapon, but literally, the fucking Clark musket, aka the Springfield, out-damages it. And that's a musket, and that's ridiculous, because this is the whole concept of rifles in Northwind is supposed to be, high damage, high accuracy, slower reload time, higher insurance. Muskets are medium damage, medium accuracy, bayonet, medium insurance. Carbines are fast reload, low damage, low insurance, relatively speaking, except for the fucking Calvet, which is like literally as much insurance as Springfield, which makes no sense, but whatever, balancing problem. And then, we've got the other weapons that we haven't discussed yet, which are OP in their own regards, which I'm actually quite excited to get to because those are my favorite. So anyways, TLDR, Kent is 65 damage, it's like a 13-second reload. It just does not do enough damage to be a solid rifle, in my opinion. Fucking Tradesman does the same amount of damage, and that's a musket, and that is literally as accurate, and you might as well just use a Tradesman. There is no reason. Like, Tradesman's even, less money to insure, so literally, fucking stupid Kents. So then we got the Jezzail. Jezzail's solid S tier. Actually, A tier, and I'll explain why. Jezzails are very good. They do 90 damage. This is the highest weapon damage we've ever covered in this chart so far. 90 damage. Hold on, let me calculate what the headshot damage is. I think it's like 104. Hold on. 90 times 1.2. 108. So 108 damage headshot. Instant kill, if you don't know. Every Northwind player has 100 health. Yeah. It's got a lot of damage. The downsides, because it has such high damage, it also does have some severe downsides, and that's why it's not S tier, it's A tier. First downside, 20-second reload, which is fucking punishing, let me tell you. In combat, it is slow, especially in a house defense, right? If someone's picking your lock, they got 60 seconds to pick it. You've got 3 shots to kill them, or else they get through your lock. So it's not a great house defense weapon, I'll be honest. It's not bad, but I prefer the Blunder for that. I used to prefer the Crossbow, then Crossbow got nerfed to the ground. So anyways, it's not bad. But yeah, long-ass reload for high-ass damage. And then it's also got, Pine Iron regular ones. They're fucking, 440 to insure on the daily, which will bleed you dry unless you're actively, getting more money into that wallet of yours, or you've just got more money to begin with. So, kind of a bitch to insure these things, just like the Jaeger. About 100 more daily to insure this thing than the Jaeger, Bayonet, whatever, to insure it daily, but Jezzails are pricey, that's what I'm trying to say. A lot of money to insure the thing. Then we've got the stupids. So stupid number 1, this is called the Tribal Blade. 20 damage, shit little native melee, it's whatever. Very much useless in combat. Tribal Knife, same deal. Ritual Knife, same deal. These 3 are essentially identical. They are identical. And we've got the little collar variant, which is the Stone Knife down here. Stone Knife, also identical stats. And then we've got the Hunting Knife and the metal collar variant. These can actually be crafted by colonists with metal ingots and such. Also bought James Bay, etc. Exactly the same weapon. And then we've got some interesting weapons that are also exactly the same, but they come from treasure chests. We've got my favorite knife of them all, the Ancient Dagger. Same 20 damage, real useless. These all, by the way, have, I'm pretty sure, 8 hits per stamina bar. They could actually have 5, though, because the recent update nerfed every knife, I think, across the board. So they could actually have 5 hits per stamina bar instead of 8, but whatever. Then we got the Short Glaive, which is just a weird little fucker. I don't really know what the deal with those are, but They're cute, and I've got a wall. I used to have a wall. I used to have a wall of them. I had like 90 something, and then they'll despawn because of a housing glitch, which sucked. So yeah, that goes there. And now we move on to the real cool weapons that are new. These are the new weapons. We've got 9 to cover. Oh, sorry, 8 to cover. Let's just get rid of the spear knife real quick. The spear knife is the best knife. Unless you're using one of the two we're going to cover next. But it used to be the best knife. It's 25 damage, 5 hits of stamina bar, real solid little knife. If you can get one, I expect you to get one. It's a good little knife. It's what I suggest you use. So then we got the Rapio, and the Rapio is a really cool weapon. The stats aren't finalized. Of course, all these stats are going to change next update because the devs plan on changing all the stats next update. This is just how it is right now. But the Rapio in specific is very up in the air. As of recording, it has 6 hits per stamina bar and 35 damage, and it's wicked fast. Actually, I think it's 5 hits per stamina bar. I think so. It's very similar to the Saber in that regard. It's just faster than the Saber. So I'm going to put that A tier, I'll be honest, because it's okay. If the animations weren't so glitched, I put it S tier, but the animations are wonky, and so you can't use it while sprinting. You do this weird hit off to the side thing, but that'll be fixed eventually. But the point is, it's really solid. It's a faster hitting Saber that also kills in 3 hits, but does slightly less damage and only does 35. And it's good from what I've seen. I've never used one, but I have fought a lot of them. I fought both Nusik and Dingo when they've been using their rapiers, and it's hard to fight because the right attack and the left attack are so similar looking, and you can get them off so quickly. And so it's a really cool weapon, and it's a solid A tier, although it's going to take some balancing work because it might actually be too OP once they implement it. It's going to be the new Great Pike, I'm calling it. And so then we've got the Scimitar, and the Scimitar is a weird one that we actually know jack shit about. From what I've heard, it's very similar to the Saber again, so we're just going to play it safe and put it A tier. We don't actually have a good picture of this one. The only ones we've seen have been on Laz's hip, and that curvy motherfucker looks kind of like a droopy blade of glass. Droopy blade of glass? No, droopy blade of grass. That is the Scimitar. That's the hilt up there. It's an interesting one. And so then we've got the Espingole. And the Espingole is a better blunderbuss. The downside is it takes a 6th lead ball, which means you're going to be firing uneven numbers unless you switch a munition pouch every shot, which is awkward. But the upside is it does 210 fucking damage, which is absurd. I'm pretty sure every lead ball fired out of the Espingole, because it fires 6 lead balls, I'm pretty sure each one does 35 damage. They could have nerfed this since last update, but that was the statistics. 210 damage. Let me calculate that with headshot damage. So if you hit someone with all of these lead balls with a headshot, you'd be doing 252, which is enough to one-shot a fucking bear. So yeah, they're great. They are great. So Espingole is a better blunderbuss. I'm pretty sure it has a wider spread too, but who cares? Spread does not really matter. You're firing it point blank anyways. It's a blunderbuss. It's a better blunder. And then we've got the Tradesman. Solid A tier, just like the other muskets before it. We've got a picture of Sundance here, just like we got a picture of Monsieur Nicholas. Because I don't actually own my Tradesman anymore. I sold my Tradesman for this knife here, and a lot of people think that was a stupid deal. And I'll explain why at the end of the video. It doesn't really matter right now, but the point is, Tradesman, it's a solid little gun. It's great. It fits very nicely into what we've got going on with the muskets. It's 65 damage, so it's a cross between the Charlie and the Springfield, Charleston and Clark musket, if you want to be new gen. And it's very accurate. It's actually almost as, if not as accurate as the Milton Rifle, which is the Kent, and it came out of Bayo. It used to have a weird glitch where it could hit like fucking 10 times or something with the bayonet. Fortunately, that's been fixed because that was OP as shit. So it also has a slightly faster musket reload time. I think it's like a 10.5 second reload, which is the same reload as a Holstein or a Prussian Cavalry pistol if you're a new gen again. Oh, the fucking names are hard to remember. 13 separate guns, and they've all had their names switched. Whatever. Point is, the Tradesman's a good little gun. It's really solid in combat, great in like a tight pinch. It's carbine if it's it's a carbine if a carbine was a musket. And so then we've got some neat little guns here. These are some of these, well, three of these are new weapons, brand new weapons with the last update. And then we've got the Tanegashima in the middle there, which we will talk about. Don't worry. So the first is the something French, baby little pistol. And I can't help thinking this was like a shout out to that Giselle pistol meme that everyone keeps reposting in game pictures, because it looks a lot like a Giselle pistol would. It's a combination of a Giselle and a Sharp, and it's kind of funny looking. This gun used to do 35 damage, but as of last patch, it now does 45 damage, and it's got an 8.5 a second reload now. It used to do 8.75, but now it's 8.5. So yeah, it's a pistol that does 45 damage with an 8.5 second reload, yeah. And it's so shit, obviously, because, again, right, there are pistols that 2-shot. Why would you want a pistol that 3 shots? You're not going to bleed someone with a pistol, guys. It's not a melee, come on. So yeah, it's a cute little gun. Completely useless in combat, I'm sorry. At the end of the day, no one's even going to use it in combat in the first place, because it would mean ensuring it instead of ensuring a primary or a melee, which is what people do. And pistols are a dime a dozen, so there's really no reason to ever ensure a pistol. So yeah, so cute little gun, pretty much useless in combat though. And then we've got the let's save Tanegashima for last, because Tanegashima is a fucking work. Actually, no, let's save the Kakui, whatever. We'll save that for last. We'll do Cutlass Cleaver. We'll do Cleaver. So Cleaver is, I'm stupid. I just realized. That goes there. So Cleaver, I'm gonna say B tier. No. I'm sorry. Knives are C tier. These two are C tier. Yeah, knives are C tier. So yeah, the Cleaver is very similar to the oh no, my brain's going. My fucking brain's blowing. A spear knife. The Cleaver is very similar to the spear knife because the Cleaver has the same 5 per stamina bar and the same 25 damage. The only difference is it has a wider swing, so you swing it from down from the side instead of stabbing forwards, which does help. And it's also slightly slower, and I'm pretty sure it has slightly higher bleed damage, but I don't actually know that for a fact, and I haven't tested it. The Cleaver is just essentially a slightly slower spear knife that swings a little wider, so it's really, a matter of preference. And by the way, this is a new weapon with the last update, and you get it by completing Tier 2 with the fishing and or cooking stores in St. Paul. And then we've got, let's do the Tanegashima first, yeah. Tanegashima, there is no secret. It is by far the most OP weapon in the game. The Tanegashima does 95 fucking damage, and that will bleed you out in 10 seconds if you're shot. With that, 95 damage is absurd. You will bleed out in 10 seconds if you're hit with this gun. It does 114 damage, I believe, with a headshot, which, unheard of, man. Only gun that does near that is the Espingole, but the Espingole is its own type of unheard of, so whatever. But the point is, it does a fucking ridiculous amount of damage. And it's almost as accurate as the Kent, or the Milton Rifle, whatever. It's almost as accurate as that gun, which is good. It's respectable. This is, it's a matchlock. It's not as accurate, This is from a different time period, but it's still really, really cool. It's actually not available in game yet, just like the Tradesman, the Espingole. Those 3 aren't available in game yet. Oh, and the Rapio too, not available. But we still know about them. Oh, also the Scimitar, not available in game yet. Should have prefaced this video like that. But anyways, we know about them even though they're not in game yet. We also know about some other guns, but we don't have images. We know about the Doglock, we know about the Dorset, which is now called the New Land Pattern Pistol or whatever. And we know about a couple of the guns they've described. We actually once saw a Doglock pistol in one of the developer inventories in a teaser, but it's just such a shitty, grainy photo, I didn't even bother including it. It looks a lot like the Prussian, just with a flat stock. It's interesting looking, though, but we'd have no idea what the fuck that's going to be, so neither here nor there. Yeah, no secret, Tanegashima OP. Tanegashima reloads in 15 seconds, which is only about 2 seconds longer than most rifles, and it's very manageable, especially when most other guns reload in 11 and 13 seconds. You only really have trouble against bows, I guess, but bows are fucking easy anyway, so who cares? Yeah, so Tanegashima is a really, really overpowered weapon. Uh, and the only way I can see them, like, not nerfing it and having them retain the stats is if they make it exceedingly rare. Which I hope they do, because I hope it remains this absurdly overpowered weapon, because there is literally only 7 of these in existence. There is only 7 Tanegashimas, just like how there's only 2 rapiers in-game. Well, okay, the devs have rapiers, so there's a lot more, but there's 2 rapiers by players of Northwind. And there's only 3 Espingoles by players of Northwind. There's only 7 Tanegashimas by players of Northwind, and I'm pretty sure there's 12 Tradesmen. But, it's just OP. It's just OP. At the end of the day, it's just really, really OP. I hope they keep it OP, because it's like the defining characteristic of the Tanegashima is it's OP. But realistically, I don't know if that's the case. And then we've got the last little weapon, the hot topic, so to speak, the weapon everyone wants to know about, the Kakui, the Kokai. What the fuck is it called? This thing. I don't know if I'm going to put an A or B. Shit, no, definitely not there. Fuck, okay, I can't actually remove it, so we're just going to have to put it somewhere for now. It's interesting, because I think I'm going to put it in B tier. It's definitely the best knife by far of knives, but that doesn't mean it's a phenomenal weapon, and especially against the better melees, right? Like, I don't think I can use a Kakui and go toe-to-toe with the better melees up here. But it is a good little weapon. It's a knife, for those you don't know, it's an lootable knife. It does 25 damage, has 6 swings per stamina bar, 6 hits, whatever you want to call it. And it is the fastest swinging melee in the game. It's kind of crazy how fast this thing is. This thing, I believe, is faster than the backsword. And that's its claim to fame. And there's literally 2 of them. Only 2 of them have been found in treasure chests. And I am proud to own one of them. I sold my Tradesman musket for one of them. And I did that because, first off, Tradesmen are going to be pretty damn common when the update drops. It's almost a guarantee because of the stats they share. Unless they make Tradesmen super OP in the next update, they're going to be common. They're going to be common weapons, at least if their treasure drops at all. I'm pretty sure they're going to probably drop from NPCs, because that feels right. That feels like what would happen. Like NPC boss fights and such, but whatever. And then also, this thing is literally rarer than Jezzails, and Jezzails were previously the most rare of the treasure drops, and that's why there's only 2 of these. They are rarer than Jezzails. And also unlootable. Just listing off the reasons here. So that's why I traded for one of these. A lot of people consider a tradesman for one of these overpay, and I'm just trying to explain why, trying to defend myself. So yeah, that is my list of the melees, and I would go through all 52 of them, list them out, list them why, but I could not be asked, and I don't think I'd even remember all their names if I tried it. But yeah, that's what I think. These weapons are dog shit. You probably couldn't kill someone with them if you tried. These weapons aren't terrible, but I wouldn't use them in combat unless you had no other option. These weapons are okay. You see these around. These weapons are good. These are the ones most Northern players use most of the time, with a couple exceptions, like these 2 aren't used much. And these weapons are really OP. So I hope you enjoyed. That's really all I have to say. Thank you for watching.